writing hack is to give your website a character. Now, when I think about the way web copy actually works, I think of a toy from my childhood, Mr. Potato Head. Now, Mr. Potato Head was a really silly toy. Actually, I didn't have one, probably because my parents didn't deem it to be educational enough. It was a really silly thing. And the way it worked was that you got this blank potato and you could then add to it whatever doodads you wanted to make different kinds of faces and give the potato different identity, essentially. And so you could have Mr. Potato with a mustache and a fedora. You could have a Mr. Potato who was a construction worker. There was a Mrs. Potato Head, by the way. And you could even have a potato head who was Spider-Man. Now, the thing that I notice about a lot of websites is that they look like Mr. Potato Head before he was dressed up. So they lack character. And when the user comes to them, it really feels just like they're facing this blank page. Now, when you think about your own website, think about whether the people visiting it and interacting with it have a sense of it as a character. And you could be in trouble if your website sounds like any of these characters. If it sounds like the woman who announces flights at the airport, she seems to be the same in every airport for every airline. Does your website sound like Charlie Brown's teacher? Do you remember that from the old cartoons? There would be this just voice in the background that just kind of went wah, 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 very monotone, no personality. You could be in trouble if you read your website copy aloud and it really sounds like an expert called in to give testimony before a jury. Yes, it's great if your website sounds authoritative, but you don't want to sound dispassionate and cold like that kind of expert in that kind of clinical setting. Does it sound like a chatty neighbor who never lets you get a word in edgewise? That's not good. Does your website sound like a know-it-all colleague who likes to dominate any meeting? Or does it sound like a self-conscious debutante, somebody who's a little bit hesitant, a little bit too modest? So a way to assess the character of your website is to read your copy aloud and just say, who does this remind me of? Does this remind me of anybody I know? And then ask yourself, if your web copy is not sounding to you the way you want it to sound, it doesn't maybe sound personal enough, distinct enough, then ask yourself, what should it sound like? And I've made a list here of just some suggestions, some of which might fit your situation and some of which might not. But here are some possibilities. Maybe your website should sound like a friendly guide. Maybe it should sound like an expert who's reliable and approachable. Your favorite professor, maybe, from grad school. Maybe it should sound like a caring mentor or a helpful coach, a wise teacher, a trustworthy advisor, an energizing collaborator. You'll notice that this list, of course, is not exhaustive, but do you see the common ground here? In each of these cases, the character of the website is one that is in some way caring and a kind of a personality that's reaching out, that's helpful in some way. People are coming to your website because they have a problem and they're looking for a solution. So you want to think about how your character is helpful in some way. Aristotle, I'm reminded, said in his work on rhetoric, character may almost be called the most effective means of persuasion. Now, Aristotle wrote that about 350 BCE, long before we heard of websites, but it really applies today. So I'd encourage you to take a second look at your web copy, to take a listen to it, and figure out just what is the character that you would like to project as you welcome your ideal audience to your pages.